I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if we could have a moment of silence. Thank you. Anybody for public comment? No? All right, so the minutes, I did get copies for everybody.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, so we'll take a vote. Mike?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm a yes. I don't see,
Did you hear from anyone from the office this
I have
morning?
not, no. This was the date he gave us, wasn't it?
I thought so.
Okay, well, without further ado, school, come on up.
Right on the left-hand side. We didn't rehearse
We
this part.
didn't.
Okay.
I know I go over here.
All right. Wherever you want to be.
I like assigned skits.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Afternoon.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us. We're here
You need to
to.
introduce yourself to the,
Oh, sure. I am Dave Thompson. I have the honor of being the interim superintendent here in Mashpee. And to my left.
Ashley Lopes, the Director of Finance for Mashpee Public Schools.
Yeah, so just kind of go through the highlights here. The budget narrative is the first section in your book, and I'm going to actually just jump to page 4 and about 2/3 of the way down. Hopefully the town of Mashpee will approve the technology requests that we have in there, and then we would remove that from our budget ask, which would result in an ask of $26,114,347, which is a 3.9% increase. This allows us to continue providing the services that we do, meet our contractual obligations, continue and complete our strategic plan, which you can see on page 5 and 6. And then if we get to page 8 on our budget development calendar, you can see that third from the bottom, February XX, we'll fill that in to be the 13th at some point. 2025, we are presenting our budget to the Finance Committee. Next page, budget guidelines, and again, I've kind of mentioned a couple of these, but this budget ensures that we're meeting all of our contractual mandates and legal mandates. Includes sufficient operating capital funds to expand into our next strategic plan, maintains the current level of educational services, and meets the increasing demands of technology and technology services in our educational settings, and addresses the increasing social emotional needs as well as instructional practice and curriculum. And it does maintain a floor or a reserve of $250,000 in our school choice funds. So, and then I don't know if we want to jump in here, or you want to?
Sure. And going on page 9, there's a high-level review of the revenue sources. So I'm projecting to have status quo for grants. There's a lot of conversations right now with the federal government if we're going to be receiving grants, but we are projecting right now to have $800,000 of grants that impact our FY26 budget. We're looking to use approximately $700,000 of school choice funds, and requesting $26 million from the town of Mashpee. The governor's budget was released in the last month, so right now we are expected to receive the minimum aid for next year.
Ashley, can you tell me, on the school choice money, you're using $700,000 of that, where do you see that being used?
Technology.
Just technology?
Technology and the infrastructure around it.
And when you say technology, you're just talking about computers? Or are you talking about, can you go into detail a little bit more on that?
Of course. That's going to be the all-around, the technology department. So all of the subscriptions that we have, all of the firewalls that we have, all of the equipment we have, that's where that money is used. It's not for curriculum, but it is for the subscriptions of things like Seesaw that we use. And if you have any kids in the schools, our lower elementary uses that as a platform to communicate with parents, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Ashley, I don't understand why every year the school department chooses to list a capital expense like the technology we're just talking about in both the budget and the capital. I mean, it seems to me it's one or the other.
Right, so it's mission critical. I'm sure you hear the town manager say that often, that we want to include everything that is mission critical in our budget. So if the capital improvement committee does not approve our technology, we are going to maintain it in our operating budget because we need it to run our school system. However, those things are over $25,000, and we are required by the charter to go to CIP and ask for money.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add, so every single thing that happens in the classroom has a technology piece to it. There's not a curriculum that's out there that does not use a piece of technology, plus the communication platforms, plus the one-to-one, plus all the firewalls, et cetera, et cetera. It is really a very technology-rich educational environment nowadays.
Yeah, I was judging the national history last week, and a lot of the kids brought in their programs on their Chromebooks.
Yep.
And so I asked them, I said, how do you like your Chromebooks? And they said, oh, they're good for school. You know, they enjoyed using them, and they did a good job with the website. So,
Yep.
yeah.
On page 10, we highlight our
Wait a
personnel.
minute.
Sorry.
There's a $200,000 deduction for the school choice from last year.
We're on page 10 with the personnel. We used $200,000 to offset the personnel budget last year. We are not planning on doing that this year. We, in collaboration with Town Hall, needed to reduce our budget, and therefore we increased the school choice allocation last year more than what we had received in the prior year.
Okay, so, all right.
On that personnel page, there is no additional headcount for Mashpee Public Schools going into FY26. We are staying at a level FTE. Those increases are truly driven by COLA increases, people moving with steps and lanes, and projected retirements. Those are all contractual obligations. On page 11 is our operating expenditures. Here again, these are mission critical items to serve our students. There is no increase, the increases are due to curriculum that we need to purchase that we had a 6-year contract for, and now we are outside of our contract. So those increases at the Coombs School are related to textbook purchases. As you move down, you can see that curriculum instruction technology line, that $1 million is offset by that $700,000 of school choice funds. So that's where you will see those monies being used. As you go down the page, you will see an additional monies being allocated to out-of-district tuition. Those are our students who go outside of the Mashpee Public Schools to be serviced for their education. And line H is transportation. Those are contractual obligations for both our big buses and our special education transportation and our homeless population transportation that we have to provide. And in line J, the athletic increase is due to inflation. The cost of supplies for athletics has gone up over the past year.
Can you talk a little bit about two things? You mentioned transportation for your homeless community. Can you enlighten us a little bit about that? And the second thing is athletics. Where are those cost increases at, and do the boosters contribute to any of those costs?
So for the first one, for transportation, if we have a family in Mashpee that ends up having to double up, say that they no longer have their rentals. A lot of times this happens with families at the end, or the spring going into summer. So they have winter rentals on the Cape, right? And now families lose those winter rentals, and sometimes they move to campgrounds or they double up with someone else. Once that happens, it is our obligation to transport them back to Mashpee Public Schools so they can attend their school of origin. So that is our responsibility to cover the cost of that. It is more frequent than you would probably think as a community member, and especially someone living on Cape Cod. I am from the Cape, and I didn't realize that really until I was in this role here in Mashpee. There is an uptick when it comes to the spring because those winter rentals are becoming summer rentals, and people are able to make much more money on that.
How many people are we talking?
I don't have that exact number, and
Roughly? I'm not.
I don't have that exact number for you right now. But those are families that are in a need, and same thing with our special education population. We don't normally highlight those numbers in conversation because it is such a small number of people within our community.
I have a question about the same thing, the transportation. It's increased 114,000 since last year. Now, is that all having to do with the homeless
No.
population?
No.
Okay.
No, there's 3 lines in there. There is the transportation increase of our large yellow buses that you see around town that are picking up all of our children. Mashpee prides itself on not having fees impacting our families, so every student has the ability to take the big yellow bus here. In addition to that, that also includes the small yellow buses that you see around town that are picking up our kids who need specialized transportation. That's one line item. The second line item is the special education transportation. So we have students that we have to transport to different schools on Cape Cod and off Cape Cod. So we might have to send a student to a specialized school closer to Boston. So that's a cost that impacts us. That is in that line. And then also the homeless transportation. We have not increased the homeless transportation line year over year. That's staying at the same budget
Is
amount.
any of that fact, or is transportation to and from sporting events? Your students that going off, is that included in this?
Not
too?
in this transportation line, it's in the athletics line.
Okay.
So the way that Massachusetts works is we have to produce an end of year report, and they have coding. So anything athletic related sits in the athletic bucket. This going into athletics, so just the normal necessities to run an athletics program, things for the athletic trainer to tape students if they need that kind of services, or just balls. Just everything is more expensive. We all know that, right? And luckily enough for us, it is only a $5,000 increase year over year. Boosters does not typically pay for things that are necessities for the program to run. Those are the things that are going through the operational budget.
Gotcha.
Boosters pay for things for students such as T-shirts, any sweatshirts or clothing kind of things that they do, and they pay for the banquets at the end of the year. But the boosters' money is from students. It's the fundraising that they do specifically for that sport. So for instance, I was one of the field hockey coaches this year. Our kids did the Falmouth Road Race. They did the Cape Cod Marathon to raise money, and they got sweatsuits.
Nice.
And those are targeted specifically at the students. So I didn't get a sweatsuit because even though we were there helping the kids, that's not my money, right? Those
Right.
are for the kids. So they are able to get it at either a discounted price or fully paid for, depending on how much they fundraised.
And does that athletics number, does that include the maintenance for the AstroTurf field?
So
How does that work?
So a little bit. So one of the things in that number, the athletic department also has a revolving account. So what that means is if you go to a football game and pay for the game, that money goes into the revolving account, and we offset the athletic cost by $25,000 each year with those entry fees. So that number is a little bit less than what it could be. That's number one. Number two is the turf is maintained by the DPW.
Gotcha.
We have a contract with a service provider that has come out just to do an additional maintenance. That is something the athletic department had asked for on top of the work that the DPW already does, and we do include that in our budget.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the operational piece?
The rest of the pages in the narrative are really just highlights and graphics of what's going on in Mashpee Public Schools. They're the same charts that you've seen year over year. It shows our budget, the allocation between our salaries and our operational sides. We always like to include pictures of what's going on in our district, and also just showing the you know, there is a declining enrollment in Mashpee that is across the board in the state and really the nation. We're seeing less school-aged kids. But we're not losing a lot of kids in each grade level. So you're not able to just wipe out a whole section of the second grade because only 4 less kids are really there from the year before. So we do look at enrollment every year. We do try to project out. We work with the town on the birth rates to see how many kids will be enrolling into preschool and then into kindergarten. So we do our best to try to estimate that. We've done a pretty good job. We're not in a place where we're over-projecting students and we have really, really small class sizes and we have too many teachers. So we do look at that year over year.
Can you tell me what or guesstimate or tell me if you know what the total number of teachers you have in the district?
Teachers?
Yeah. Or,
Just teachers.
don't want teachers?
Classroom teachers.
Yeah.
Classroom teachers?
Yes, classroom teachers.
138.
Thank you. Just curious.
If you need any more than that, I have to get back to you.
All right, that's fine.
In your binder, you also have, the next tab is a summary page of our overall budget. You'll see last year's budget in there, and then our projected FY '26 numbers and the increases. The next tab, you'll have a detailed line item of the FY '26 projected budget. Also included in your binder are the memos that we send over to Town Hall. As some of you were in our December meeting, there has been a change to our budget. We did reduce it with working with the town to meet the overall needs.
I have a question about the administration salaries, the increase. Is the administration part of any kind of, union?
Union?
Contracts or
No.
anything? No, you're outside of that.
Correct.
So the 3.4 is some increases to those positions?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I'll, correct me if I'm wrong. So you have a new superintendent coming aboard in July?
July 1st.
Yep.
And thank you for your service, sir. How, I don't know if anything's been made public yet or not, or what the situation is as far as where Mrs. DeBoer was at last time. She was at a pretty high level. Do you know where this person's going to come in at yet, or are you still working on that?
They're still working on contract negotiations, so I do not have any information to provide at this time.
All right, when that happened, did you get that to us?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
And I have another question, and that has to do with the Coombs school expenses.
Yep.
That went up 26%. Can you let us know what that's about?
Yes, so as we were talking about with the operational budget, that is for curriculum and textbooks. We were under a 6-year contract and we are no longer there, so we have to buy those consumables and those textbooks this year, which is related to that 26% increase. As you can see, it's $20,000. It looks like a lot year over year, but it is a requirement for our kids to continue their ELA program.
But it wasn't that at the other schools. I mean, the other schools didn't have it?
It is in the other schools, but the other schools had one-time expenditures in FY '25 that they do not have in FY '26. So I was able to reduce the budget due to those.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm just curious, I know that there's negotiations that happens from time to time with unions in the schools. Is that coming up soon, or is that a ways off still? Or is that ongoing?
Yeah, we're currently negotiating with our paraprofessionals and executive assistants. So,
Good to know.
yeah,
And next year we'll have teachers, our Unit A contract and our Unit B contract,
and the Unit B, which is the administrators.
So you kind of stagger it out?
a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Well, hard to do it all at one time sometimes, isn't it?
Well, there's good and bad to doing it all at one time.
Exactly.
Yep.
Under your curriculum and technology salaries, That went up quite a bit. Was that,
Those are contractual obligations, so people who receive new contracts, those are the actual prices of their contracts.
Was any staff added to that curriculum and
No.
technology salary stuff?
There's no additional staff throughout the district for FY '26.
In the Quashnet School, you got, the techs went up considerably and the instructional equipment came down.
Yes.
It seems a little bit odd, is that?
Well, we budget for what we need. So they did not need as much money in their instructional equipment line for FY '26 as they did for FY '25, but they did need more money in their textbook lines because we now have to pay for that cost. If you look at were you looking at Coombs or were you looking at Quashnet?
Quashnet?
So Quashnet in FY '25 needed to upgrade their robotics program. So that was a one-time expenditure for FY '25 that they do not have to pay in FY '26. As we talked about in the Coombs increase, where we had to pay for those textbooks, you can see that increase in the Quashnet line, where it went from $10,000 to $27,000.
Boy, yeah.
Yeah, so normally what you try to do is you have a certain amount of, and what you're seeing is the money moving around to different accounting
Yeah, that's what-
pieces
that's
here.
what-
But you have curriculum, you do it here this year, you know, this school the next year, this school the next year. So it moves around, so you're gonna see positive and negative numbers. But that's just good budget management as opposed to doing 5 at once, so.
Look at the numbers, it doesn't appear to be just good management. It appears like it sticks out real.
Well, I could have held the line at 0, right, and not decreased it, and then that I would have inflated my budget, and that would not have been appropriate to provide to the town.
That's true.
Yeah, so when you look at the bottom line in the bottom right-hand corner of that summary sheet, you know, the final ask at this point is a 3.9% increase, and that has been, which is actually a pretty low number when you look at other districts across the state.
Well, 2024, it looks like you had a 4.7, so it's down.
Correct. That was coming off the heels of a 0.44% increase the year before.
Right.
Yep.
The high school general supplies is a big number increase, percentage-wise.
What page on, Dick?
Page
The general supplies.
3.
Yes.
Page 3.
Yes, that's a reallocation of monies throughout the high school bucket. They needed more in the general supplies line and less in the other areas, such as instructional materials. You can see the reduction there, and high school textbooks. As we've talked about, we're kind of on a cycle of replacing textbooks, so we did not need that money allocated there, but they do need a little bit more money in the consumables that they use in the classrooms every day.
Consumables in the classroom every day. What does that mean in common language?
Paper, pencils, crayons, depending on the level of the student,
Okay.
highlighters, things of that nature.
Yeah, just curious.
Sometimes workbooks,
Right.
Right.
$20,000 worth.
those
of-
are consumables, have to be bought every year.
That's a lot of textbooks.
Well, textbooks change. They got to be updated.
Yep.
Now, I know there's a trend also, at least there was at one point, that you had a lot of your textbooks, at least some of your textbooks, on the Chromebooks. Is that still, you're going that direction, or are you going back to more of the paper?
Well, yes and no, but what the publishers realized about 12 years ago is that by giving it away by free, they were losing money, so now it's a subscription service.
Shocking.
Yes, so that has been corrected, so it's not a big savings. The advantage is that the materials are new every year and updated. So you didn't buy something and then 5 years later it's outdated because they can just do it on the fly. The disadvantage is that you are paying a yearly subscription or you're paying all up front for 5 years or what have you.
So I just want to understand, so are some of these subscriptions, some of the textbook expenses, subscriptions for the Chromebooks, for the books to be on the Chromebooks, and are you getting a physical book also, or just a Chromebook?
It depends. So sometimes, it depends on the level. So for instance, you know, at the elementary level, it really is very much a video presentation for a lot of things. So kids will watch the video, and then they will go back and they will have a workbook that they do work in.
Got you,
So it's not really a textbook and a piece of paper.
got you, got you.
So,
And we also have yearly, students lose books.
right.
So
Does-
we have to replace some books in piecemeal.
So when I was in school, if I lost my book, I was responsible for my book. That means I paid for it. Does that not happen anymore?
So we do bill families.
Oh, good, okay.
Yep.
All right, just asking.
No, that hasn't changed.
Hasn't changed, okay.
Nope.
And how are you, I'm just curious about something else. How are you implementing AI into your overall framework as a school? Is any of that reflected in any of these numbers as well?
Not at this time, and this is actually a very big debate right now about how to, and, it's back to the,
Sure.
the calculator from the slide rule, it's the same sort of conversation over and over again, but we need to, and everybody's kind of working on it, but no one actually has come out with a policy yet, but we need to, we can't hide from it, we need to teach how to use it appropriately and responsibly and ethically, and then figure out ways to, so there is some of that being done. It's not
When you say
system-wide.
that, is it we as in we in Mashpee have to figure it out? Or
We as,
the
we,
whole
the-
school?
well, it's kind of interesting, 'cause it's one of the things that I've been researching. There isn't a district right now that actually has an AI policy, so,
Okay.
the School Committee Association has not put one forth. I think we're probably about 10 months behind where we should be on that, but that's just my personal opinion.
And with all the AI that's available to the public in general, are there ways that, are there softwares that teachers have access to so they can identify if a student is being creative with their work that
Yeah.
way?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question.
And the appropriate, well, I'm putting forth an opinion that will reside with me only, but, we want to be able to use AI to make work better and faster.
Yep.
But not lose that creative piece. And, we really need to develop critical thinkers to
Right.
assess whether that, is quality work or not.
Right.
Because you can get, some
Non-quality
sort of
work.
fictitious thing put out there
Right.
that's not true based on some algorithm somebody put in there. So
That's very tricky.
It-
And I think most of society is dealing with it right now.
that's why
Yeah.
that's why the schools need to be going slow. But
Yeah.
there's a couple test cases in the courts right now around AI, and we will see how that all plays out.
Well, maybe somewhere down the line, the school committee will put forth a policy, and we'll see how that goes.
Yes, but again, it's the same problem. There really isn't a set guideline out there.
understand.
Everybody's kind of
It's all new.
putting their toe in the water and then running back on the beach because it's cold.
That's probably like when the internet became so available to everyone too, right?
Yeah.
You had to come together with the terms of how to use it and how to
Right.
implement it.
Yeah, and it's like anything that's complex, it's very challenging.
Yep.
Because it's going to be part of our lives, but we also need to be cautious, and just shutting the door and saying no is not really an option, so,
Thank you.
welcome.
The science fair was very nice last night. Enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Some of the kids did a very excellent job.
great.
Some were a little bit weak, but weaker, to be expected.
Is it possible next year to get these books before the meeting? Because we have to glance through it really quickly, and we maybe know what your total budget increase is, but we don't know all the detail. Is that something we could do next year?
Sure. Our budget is put in munis with the rest of the department budgets in October. So you will have our budgets in that big black binder
Yes.
that is provided by Town Hall. So it's the same numbers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We just present it in a different way.
Okay.
So but if you want it, it is released in January.
I
And we,
like the way you present it, and it's a lot easier to read.
for the munis reports, I get
Yes.
that.
Right.
But we can 100% bring them to you earlier.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I would promise to do that, but I won't be here to do it
I
for
know.
you, so maybe I could come back and visit.
And unfortunately, I won't be here either.
But if you have questions, so you go home and you put this under your pillow and you wake up in the middle of the night, decide to read through it again. But seriously, if you have a question, by all means, fire it off and we will.
You want us to wait until the morning, though?
Maybe. I might be up with something under my pillow too, who knows?
Over on page 6, what's the CIP request? We talked about that already?
It is 134.85.
And you'll find that in the report that the town manager's going to give us about the CIP as well.
Okay.
And at this time, CIP has supported our request.
And if you go to that page on the CIP report, you'll see it's Chromebook leases, wireless upgrades, firewall replacement, and food service,
Where'd you see that?
food services equipment.
That goes back.
That's when I got you got it,
Oh, that's on last week.
yeah.
The food service is not included in that 130.
sorry.
It's a separate item.
Thank you.
Just in case anyone's
Thank you
adding
for
it up.
correcting me, or Rodney would have either one.
He's ignoring you.
Any other questions at this time?
No.
Well, thank you so much for coming
Thank
in.
you. Thank
For your time today, appreciate it.
All right. And again, there's any
If we
questions,
come
just let
us
us
with
know. We're
anything,
more than
we
happy to
will
get.
reach out. Yes, thank you.
If you have
you
any
the
questions,
information you need.
we will bother Don at 3 in the morning.
He's probably up anyway.
Exactly.
Thank you. You're welcome. Warm the ball up for you, Rodney. You're welcome.
I apologize, I was told that it was canceled.
That was
So-
last week.
Last week was canceled.
I was told there was no meeting today, so I guess we'll have to check the schedule a little better. But at any rate, I'm here. I submitted the operating budget to the Select Board for fiscal '26, and this was after review of the department heads' requests and taking a look at all the mission-critical needs, as I commonly refer to it as. The majority of the adjustments attributed this year, just like any other year, to merit steps and/or cost of living adjustments consistent with the employment obligations, which includes collective bargaining agreements and PAP, which is the personal administration plan for non-union employees or personal service contracts. The town increase with no fixed costs or school costs is 3.8%. The school increase is 3.9%. The Cape Cod Tech cost is 2.8%, as there is one additional student. The town's fixed costs are increasing by 17%, and that reflects a 6% overall increase. Obviously, operations includes all departments or agencies, and for those that may not be familiar with all of our departments, I'll list them all: accounting, assessing, treasurer, tax collector, health, building, conservation, planning, human resources, information technology, human services, police, fire, public works, council on aging, recreation, natural resources, wastewater management, library, and the town clerk's office. In addition, obviously, the select board and the town manager's office has a budget, but it's not considered a department per se. And then obviously the school district. Any specific increases were generally articulated in the department head's budget narrative, which was previously submitted to all of you folks. The operating budget, in terms of expenses not related to wages or salaries would be things like supplies, utilities, contracts, etc. The balanced budget also includes funding some anticipated warrant articles in May of 2025 at that town meeting that is scheduled. And also, I would note that the wastewater management budget is transitioning to its long-term operating status. And as I mentioned to the Select Board, I'll mention to FinCom, as required by the State Revolving Fund, or SRF, financing, the operating costs of the wastewater facility will be an enterprise fund that will eventually be able to sustain itself through user rates and fees. Fiscal '26 will be the first year that the wastewater management department will operate as an enterprise. And because rates have yet to be charged until the facility is operational, it will be fully subsidized through free cash until such time that that transitions. The intention is to reduce the amount of the subsidy annually by increased revenue from rates and fees collected as the number of users of the system increase until it becomes 100% self-sufficient and no longer a draw on the tax levy funding. That is it basically for the summary. I will say the fixed cost breakdown includes various things that I know the finance director went over. I don't know if she's in. That'd be nice. This includes adjustments for rate costs and to cover modifications by staff for insurance purposes. Like, you might be wondering, well, what is that? If a person starts off as a single plan, ends up with a spouse, then we have to cover 75% for the family plan. So we have to have a little bit of a buffer there because we can't anticipate what folks are going to do. It is important to note the veterans' budget is currently a good faith estimate. If this cost is not funded, the state will reduce the amount of state aid that the town receives. So we generally don't tinker with that, and we try to get a good faith estimate. Principal and interest inside debt increases are due to the new street betterment projects that were permanently bonded in September 2024. This debt will be paid with the street betterment funds. Principal and interest outside debt increases are attributed to the debt exclusions for capital bonds, including the school HVAC project, design and engineering for a new police station, a new fire truck, and DPW roof repairs. Which one of your respectful members, I'm sure, remembers?
Yes.
Because you were there.
I was there, thank you.
I remember.
We were all in
that.
agreement.
I'm not sure that we were all on,
We're on some page,
yeah, we weren't all in agreement on that one, but for the most part.
for the most part.
And wastewater construction debt for Phase 1 and Phase 1A. I think some of you folks sat here a few years ago when we were thinking that we were probably going to need an override by 2021 or 22, or certainly by 23. We've been able to avoid that, and we've avoided it again. I think through the fiscal policies and practices of the town, we have been able to extend this out. I give credit to the advice provided to me by the finance team, specifically the finance director. And not only do we have some sound policies and management, in my view, but we've also, as a result, been able to maintain our AAA bond rating, which obviously helps us ultimately for some of these projects. And we've avoided going right to the tax levy, but yet at the same time, we have preserved what I consider to be a fairly progressive and balanced capital improvement program, taking care of some of the critical needs. So there was obviously some reductions that I think I articulated in our last meeting regarding the CIP. And when those decisions or those choices are made, they're never easy because I think just about every single request that came in was not necessarily what I'd describe as a wish list, but rather a need that was well articulated. The problem is, at some point, you have to say, okay, maybe they're all in the need category, but you have to prioritize, and that's what we tried to do, I think, at CIP, and I think that's what we've tried to do collectively from the operational budget perspective. There are some heavy increases overall, particularly as it relates to the new police facility. But as they say, it is what it is. It's unfortunate that the timing of the police facility is now compared to 4 or 5 years ago, before COVID and before supply chain issues and so on and so forth. We could have built it a little cheaper. In addition to that, I wish we weren't faced with so many wastewater challenges at the same time as the police facility. But again, not to sound repetitive, it is what it is. I think overall, if you look at our tax rate compared to some other communities, we're doing okay. At least that's what I'm being told. So I think given the level of services and given our attention to detail and taking care of a lot of these issues that are pressing, we've not only taken the balanced approach that I mentioned, but moreover, we are investing in our future to take care of these issues in a methodical manner that I think is responsible to the taxpayers. And trying, although I think some folks might disagree, trying to avoid too much of a burden on the taxpayer in the community of Mashpee. So,
I have a question that doesn't relate actually to the budget, but it relates to revenue. And you may not want to answer that now, but
if it's a revenue question, I'm going to defer to the finance director. I just wanted to make sure she was there.
she's here.
She's sitting
Well,
behind you.
it does have to do with the residential exemption and how that affects revenue of the town. Because I just know I've got my own bill that is a lot less than it was last year, so multiply that out to all the people who have applied for the residential exemption. How does that affect our revenue?
Your bill was a lot less,
It was a lot less.
so I assume that's not a complaint.
It's not a complaint, not at all. No, I'm very pleased.
You really want
but
to
I'm-
bring this up?
But I'm just thinking, though, how does that affect the total revenue of the town?
So we still collect the same amount of taxes. So the levy is the levy. It's just the way it is apportioned out among the taxpayers.
Okay.
So when the residential exemption is applied, it reduces our values by that amount, which I think it was about $1,100 was the residential exemption this year. What that does is it just shifts the tax burden over to the second homeowners.
To
So we still
others.
have that pie of tax levy, the whole
Right,
pie.
right.
It's just they pay
Some people are paying more.
Correct.
So I can
They
pay
do not receive, yeah, if you're a second homeowner, you do not receive the residential exemption. And there's other situations that you would not qualify for the residential exemption. So you would not be entitled to that reduction in your value.
Right,
The
but,
other thing you got to remember is, and you don't have to announce where your property is, but you got to remember it goes by assessment. In addition to the rate, I don't know if your assessment went up or down. And then, of course, factored into it is the tax exemption, which the finance director and the assessor and the treasurer, tax collector can explain better than me. But the bottom line is there are a lot of factors. It's not just the rate itself.
Right, right. No, and I don't have a question about that, but my question is, where does the money come from to
Offset that.
offset the exemption? And I think you've answered that.
Yes, and because the exemption was increased this past year, we had roughly another 500 applicants. So what happens with that is, you've probably heard us talking about the overlay, which is the provision for abatement accounts, and we raise a certain amount on the tax recap every year. For these situations where people didn't apply before we set the tax rate, we have that levy all set. If they came in after the tax bills went out, which 500 plus people did, we have to hit the overlay. So that money that we've been raising over the last few years, and we kind of predicted this was going to happen if the residential exemption increased, so we were able to build that overlay up. That has to cover the reduction in taxes that those people will be paying.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So in the end, we collect all the revenue, and the revenue will be collected, so.
The other thing that I would credit the finance team for is we got to make sure that any projected revenues are on the mark, because if they're not, then obviously we're going to be in trouble at the end of the fiscal year. And they're always conservative projections. So that helps us avoid the trouble coming down the road that some other communities sometimes face if they, I don't want to say inflate their projections, but if they're inaccurate in their estimates.
We got 3 alligators in the pond. We got the phase 3 for the sewer treatment plant. We got the fire truck we're gonna need to in the police station. And are those gonna start to hit us next year? Those prices for those things? We're just covering up this year. We don't have, seeing that. But next year, we're gonna see, a big bump, I would imagine, in those alligators.
Yeah.
Nope, that's okay.
So, obviously, the police station would be voted on in May.
In May.
And there should be a wastewater item. I know that we typically do not vote on financial matters in October. It's generally May, and that's right in the charter. But it doesn't mean that we can't, and for various factors, and Mr. McElvery was there at the meeting, it was determined to defer a wastewater initiative to October. But to answer your question, yes, there are some significant potential increases coming down the pike. The only thing I would just add, as you already know, this would be a debt exclusion. This is not obviously something that we can cover.
But it still comes down to the tax rate.
Oh, I'm not disputing that. You will definitely see it in your tax bill.
Exclusion is a nice word to say, but it still comes down to the bottom line is your tax rate.
Yes.
It's still going to come out.
And the FY,
You're still going to have one of those when these things start to hit the fan.
I mean, you described it as alligators in the pond, but somebody's got to hunt them down, right? And I mean, we need to get the work done. The police station, we all have seen it.
Oh, you
Is,
went?
Yes,
yeah,
we
it was
Did you see the rat?
jaw-dropping, eye-opening,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And the wastewater treatment, we know that's been an issue for,
As Mr. Milbury just referenced, I wouldn't even call it the alligator in the pond. I'd call it the rat in the basement.
With the mice.
Right. So,
And the mice, too. The mice is different than the rat.
But maybe we need a snake.
yeah, how are you going to approach this presenting to the town for the police station? Do you have to do some legwork and,
Yes. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse, as Lynn Barbie would say, but I'll do it anyway. We're going to have a very informative public session in April. We're also going to do an educational and informational campaign so the word gets out, whether it be through our friends in the print media or through any other source that we can get it out legitimately. Obviously, we'll have it on the website, we'll have it on Facebook, we'll have it on the PD's Facebook. We will definitely get the message out at our information session, which is scheduled in April. We will make sure that there are pictures, that there are articulated reasons why this new facility is needed. All of the problems that have been identified are going to be reviewed. Don't want to overload the people with info, but by the same token, want to give them the opportunity to come to a public meeting. It will not be a select board meeting. It'll be an informational session. I will sit right there, and we'll try to get MTV in. And anybody from the public that has a question, they'll be able to ask it. And we will have the architects there, the DPW director there, the police chief will be there. We'll all be there. And anybody with any questions, we'll try to answer them. If we don't have the answers that night, then we'll get you the answer. I'm hearing an echo in my ear.
April 10th,
April 10th. April 10th at what time?
6:30.
30.
6:30, there you go.
So just to
And for the public that is listening, April 10th, 2025, 6:30 PM, right here in this room. The public is welcome. And if you have any questions, any concerns, and there's no such thing as a stupid question that evening, although it's got to be related to the PD. It can't be related to something else. We'll listen, and we'll try to get you the answer.
You should put up a picture of the rat and the.
Oh, I've got the
and
pictures.
the water
Yep,
coming down the
yep.
windows.
I think, well, if there's any way I can help, I'd be certainly happy to. I think everybody here has done the tour, and everybody else have had their eyes opened and see the need for it. But
Right.
the big need requires a big ask.
Right. The words just don't do it justice. I mean, we can tell how horrific it is all day long, but
And
we
we've
tell you,
got,
seeing is believing, my friend.
yeah, and we've got the inspections from the state that have failed the cell blocks. We've got a station house that is just simply not functional for its use in 2024 or 25. And it was identified as a station house that had issues a number of years ago, and we probably should have addressed them sooner, but it is what it is, as they say. at this
Well,
juncture.
I can tell you that I don't take a lot of space, but I was going to get claustrophobia if I walked into those jail cells.
Well, it's unhealthy,
Yeah.
It
Right.
is.
it's unsafe,
Yep.
Yep.
and it's inadequate for what are our most essential people in town.
One of the problems that has been identified beyond the cell block area and just the dysfunction of having to walk through the cell block area to go from the booking room or the detective's office to the break room or vice versa. Beyond that is the air quality. It's just very poor, and the officers are getting sick, and they're people who are in good physical condition. And they are working 24/7. We've got public safety dispatchers in there, we've got the police officers in there. It's not even conditions that we want our people in lockup in, never mind our emergency responders. So there's all kinds of issues. We get it, and we've got a good plan that will go before the voters in May, but before we get to May, we're going to do a a campaign to keep the people informed as to why now, and we just didn't want to do it too early because we don't want people to lose interest. We want to percolate the interest leading up to town meeting.
Just a couple of things, Madam Chairman. We talked about the tax exemption real quick again, if I can follow up on that. You don't get the, if you're a resident, you do not automatically get the tax exemption. You have to apply.
Yes, you have to
Right.
apply, but once you apply, you don't have to reapply until, I believe it's 8 years now.
Excellent.
I think it's 5 to 8 years,
Okay.
somewhere around there. So once you've applied, then
Yep.
you're good for several years, and then the town will put out notifications
Right.
that it's time to reapply.
And
Could I just clear up a myth before I forget it?
sure,
There's a myth that, you know, the town wants your tax info relative to the exemption application. That is not true. What they ask for in the assessing office is a copy of your tax return. You can redact everything but your name and your address. That's all we're interested in. And the only purpose of that, and maybe the finance director can elaborate, is to just verify that this is your primary address.
Right.
If this is your primary address, then you can get the tax exemption or declare it. But as you said, Mr. McKelvey, you got to apply for it, and you got to fill the paperwork out. But if anybody is saying that you have to provide your tax info, you do not. We don't care what you made or where you made it. We just want to have your name and your address.
And I will tell you that the lady that we dealt with was very nice, very professional, and did not ask for anything except our name and address.
We try to be
She was lovely.
friendly and professional.
Yeah, but my point is that I'm just saying that exactly what you're saying is right.
Yeah,
We did it,
absolutely.
and nobody asked for anything else.
It's
So
not.
how do you
it's-
know if you were approved after sending in all the information? I didn't apply last year, but I did apply after it went up. And I sent everything in by mail.
I don't know if they're sending out verifications. They may, I believe they're going to let people know. I have not spoken to the assessor, so I'd have to verify that. Because I know that they've been receiving calls about people saying, hey, did I get it? I am not seeing it. If you didn't apply prior to the tax rate being set, then your bill came out in full, and obviously it wasn't on your bill, so it will be applied, and your fourth quarter will be reduced.
Okay.
So you should see that
Just walk
reduction.
over there
Yeah,
and tell you, right?
yeah.
I suppose, yeah. I'm lazy, though.
And people, it's not income-based. A lot of people thought it was income-based because the tax return, as the town manager said, is only to prove that this is your main residence, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, it says it right on there.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
I just redacted
I
everything.
think people just get nervous about it.
Yeah.
If you stop in, they'll tell you, but what I can do is find out whether or not there is any confirmation that is sent out. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd like to say that because they've been receiving calls about people not hearing anything, that I mean, there were literally 500 applications. They have a huge stack, so they're working to get through that. And I'm sure the town manager would probably encourage the assessor to just send something out to people that have applied.
And it might be delayed because they are short-staffed right now. They're down one full-time person, which we're in the process of filling.
I want to get back to that for just a second.
I'm sorry, I
That's okay.
got you off
That's a good
course.
point, great point. If you don't apply for the reduction, the 20% reduction, how does that affect your taxes? If you're a resident and you don't apply, how does that affect you?
Well, you're most likely going to see an increase.
Right.
Because if you notice, the tax rate increased. So people, but your tax bill actually went down.
So it's important to apply, because if you don't apply and you're a resident, it's more than likely your taxes are going to go up some.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to get at on that one.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
No, I was just going to say, I don't want to keep interrupting you,
That's
Mr.
okay.
McGelvey, but if obviously you've got a second or third home and your primary residence is in Florida, then you're out of luck.
It ain't happening.
It's not happening.
Right, exactly.
But
They
I'm
have
sorry.
a second and third home, they're not out of luck.
I just want to talk about wastewater for just a minute, if I can. Because your presentation the other night for the select board, both of you, very good. And I want to make sure I heard what I heard. I want to verify with you. We're talking about the payoff of, we've had phase 1, phase 1A, and there's other phases coming. If I understood correctly, phase 1 and 1A are being paid for by the WIF and the stabilization fund. Is that correct?
Yes.
1 and 1A.
1 and 1A. So that's not.
1 and 1A.
That 1 and 1A. Let's repeat that. 1 and 1A. That's not going to show up again on our taxes to pay for 1 and 1A.
Correct. So, and I did want to mention, it came up, the bond for the fire truck, that involves the fire truck. It is also the police design and engineering that was approved. That is part of the FY26 budget. So that is, we permanently bonded, that is part of the debt budget.
Right.
That is offset, I mean, a large part of that debt is the wastewater, Phase
Right.
1, which has been permanently financed through the SRF. That is fully funded through the WIF and the wastewater stabilization. Looking at our analysis, we are confident that Phase 1 and 1A will be covered through those two means.
Excellent.
So those will not be requiring increases in the tax levy for those. Remember, the WIF is a surcharge, so everybody is
Right.
paying that. But there will be no additional tax on it.
And we're still getting the SRF funding.
Yes.
As far as we know. And we have had some forgiveness come through as well.
Yes.
Do you know what the numbers are, the percentages are on that at this
I
point?
can tell you. So for Phase 1, this is just Phase 1.
Right, thank you.
They actually split the loan into two separate loans. And the loan forgiveness through the SRF on the first amount was $47,247,300. The SRF forgave $8,884,320. The Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, that subsidy is $5,395,801. On the second pool, we call them pools when they split the loans up like in this manner, the loan amount was $6,502,700, and the loan forgiveness, which is just the SRF at this point, is $1,089,994.
Got you.
So what the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund did is they fronted this subsidy, or the forgiveness, it's a subsidy, in full.
Okay.
So moving forward, I believe it's going to be on an annual basis.
Good to know.
Oh,
But-
it's an annual basis.
Right, so we're gonna be
They're
paying a little
changing their
less.
methodology, just because of, there's so many water quality projects on the Cape right now, that to try to come up with millions and millions of dollars all at once is, they didn't expect as much of a need as they saw. So they have a funding mechanism that they've kind of changed, but we've been assured that there will be a subsidy.
Just remember, a few years ago, we changed it at the CPC level to, let me start from scratch. CPC was 3%, it was reduced to 2%, and then the WIF came in at 2%. So there was an overall increase of 1%. So we were at 3, up to 4, CPC reduced, WIF was created. I forget how many years ago it was.
Yep.
And
So
some
we-
folks have argued that CPC should possibly be 1% and WIF should be 3%. I'm not a policymaker, so I'll leave that to others, but that's one of the things that I've heard mentioned by several folks, including policymakers.
So in May, when we go to town meeting for wastewater, we have, things that are going to really affect us in May are going to be the recharging stations for Phase 3, right? And that's $200,000. And then there's the Mashpee Wakeby wastewater system, engineering and design, that's $2,500,000, and that's for a specific, that's to help clean up that pond area. It's rather than pulling pipe up there and doing whatever, they're going to do their own little area, it looks like. And that's for that. And that'll be coming forth in May. And then the alum treatment, which we think will help the pond as well, which is 250,000, sorry. That's coming forth in May too. That's what the expenditure cost is in May for those items.
Yes, that's my recollection.
Right. And then in October, we will, the CIP looks like they'll put forth another debt exclusion for the 24 million in October versus this one time, because we did want to do the engineering, design, and construction all at one time, push that out, separate that. And I think we had and I think Rodney would agree with me, we had real constructive conversations in the CIP as how we got to those numbers and what we did.
The only thing is, I would add that that vote, I believe, was conditional upon SRF funding and debt exclusion. Obviously, you're not going to come up with 24 million
Right. It was,
otherwise.
yep.
But that was the condition of
And the condition, we could have it done in May. You were going to get a legal finding on that.
Yes.
Yes, and you got that, I think. Did you get that yet, the legal finding, if we could do it in May?
In October?
No, October, excuse me, October.
I was going to say May.
I know, right? Sorry.
You had me confused.
I had me
Yes.
confused.
Well, yes, there was a question as to whether or not it could be done in October, and there was a request for legal review. I do have a legal review received in writing, and we can do it in October.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Mr. Collins.
But there was SRF funding for the 24 million, right? How much?
I don't have, do you have the figure that the IUP, I don't have that with me, that Andrew emailed to us. It was an email.
I've got the operating backup. I don't have the CIP backup.
I can go, it was what Andrew sent for the
Yeah, if you wanna
21,
try
grab
that.
that?
Sorry.
Trade that? No problem.
Mr. Collins, what is the bottom line for your recommendation for the 26 budget?
What's the bottom line for?
For your the town manager's recommendations?
Yes, the bottom line should be,
Drum roll, please.
yes, $78,950,071. However, I just want to point out that that does not, I repeat, does not include wastewater and the enterprise fund.
Okay.
So I just want to make that clear, because
Yep.
I don't want somebody to say, well, wait a second here, you're spending X amount for wastewater. I'm attributing that with the enterprise fund, and if you don't have these...
No, we don't.
No, we didn't get those.
Well, you will now.
All right.
Thank you.
This is in 26.
If we had a board secretary, we might have
4,
those.
5, 6, 7 copies.
He didn't even hear that.
He's ignoring you.
Yeah.
Yeah, make 10 copies. I'll have them shortly.
Okay.
So what you will have is a breakdown, and I apologize, you'll have the breakdown of the request. You'll have a copy of the recommendation and the percentage difference. And if you were trying to reconcile the difference, it should be in your narrative in terms of the explanation. However, if you have any follow-up questions, be more than happy to come back. And also, more than happy to bring in a department head if it's a specific question regarding the operations budget request of a particular department.
No problem. I will run the numbers.
So this is this just came out January 30th. This is the intended use plan. It's a draft, but under this plan right now, Mashpee is approved for that $24 million collection system, $17,230,000.
And Rodney, did you say in that total of 78,950,000?
You're going to have it momentarily.
Okay. So
Whatever
we'll
I
have-
just read, he's got, and he's making a copy.
And that excludes wastewater?
It does, and you're going to see that on this sheet that I'm
Okay.
going to give you.
Okay, thank you.
You're going to see a breakdown of each department, the request, what I recommend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rodney.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Here, I have one for you. And by the way, I know the school was here before I arrived, but we were able to reconcile a figure. The superintendent, myself, assistant superintendent, and they took it to the school committee and voted on that, so that figure should be in here.
Can I just, while people are looking at this for a second, can I get you to address something else for me real quick? Seemed to be a lot of, I just want the public to understand, there seem to be a lot of different vehicles requested by the police department this time around. Can you talk about that a little bit and how that process works? Some are leases, some are buys, and why the necessity to change that on a regular basis?
Right. So previously, for approximately 20 years, or maybe just under 20 years, the police department, every 3 years, would lease a large sum of vehicles that were referred to as their line vehicles, the black and whites that are going 24/7. And we generally, I think, got like 10 vehicles or something like that, which sounds like a lot, but they had to last for 3 years. Also, you don't want any particular car going 24/7 every single day, but by the same token, there are a lot of those vehicles that are driving, if not 24/7, every day, certainly certain days of the week. So we did the lease so that we broke up the payments, year 1, year 2, and year 3. The non-line vehicles, like the administrative vehicles or the detective vehicles, were replaced every 6 years. What has changed? What changed is the lease program started to climb in terms of the interest. So whereas it appeared to be beneficial to spread it out over 3 years, it's now less beneficial because of the interest. So therefore, what we're now doing is purchasing what is hoped to be 3 or 4 vehicles per year, whether it be a line car or a non-line car. So we would be generally purchasing that number in outright purchasing instead of leasing. Obviously, if you're outright purchasing, the cost goes up, but at the same time, we're not getting 10 vehicles in any given year, or in the 3-year cycle.
Right. All right, thank you. Appreciate that.
And you had mentioned when we own the vehicle after it retires from police service, it becomes a town hall car.
I appreciate you mentioning that, Madam Chair. I forgot to mention. So the line vehicles are generally junk after 3 years. The black and whites that have had a lot of idling time, rapid response time, et cetera, et cetera. The non-line vehicles might be in better condition despite being older, i.e. 6 years. So those vehicles, or a black and white that may have lower than usual mileage, those vehicles we transfer up to either the town hall or to another department, including but not limited to DPW, Recreation, Council on Aging, and maybe 1 or 2 others that I'm not thinking about, but they are rotated to other agencies. So by the time one of those vehicles has fulfilled its life with the town of Mashpee, it's probably closer to 8 or 9, maybe 10 years. I would also add that at the conclusion of that duration, we will trade it in if we're going to get more money for a trade-in, or if we think we're going to get more at our auction, then we'll auction it. So we're going to go wherever we can get the most money.
Yes. Makes sense. And you've done pretty well with your online auctions, haven't you?
We have. We've done very good. Have you participated?
I've watched from a distance.
You can legally participate.
I think, I haven't participated, but I watch, I look at it, it's interesting.
So if it's declared surplus, it goes to auction.
Yes, excellent.
The only thing that gets junked is if, A, there's no bid at all, and it's declared non-usable, and no other agency needs it or wants it. We make sure, like, if it's gone from one department and it could potentially be used by another department, we make sure, whatever it is, there's no use for it before we even go to auction, and then after auction, if nobody bids on it, then it's declared surplus junk, and it's disposed of by DPW.
Where do we stand with our revenues available for appropriation or free cash?
I don't have it. I can tell you, based on what we are planning to utilize for the May special town meeting, as well as the May annual town meeting, we're roughly going to be left with, and it all depends on what happens with snow and ice, that could bring this down a little bit. 1.4 million is where, and that's after following policy and reserving. The policy says 5 to 10% of the operating budget, which is going to be about, we figure at the low end, 4 million, roughly.
So has last year's been certified?
2025 was certified in September, and that's what we're utilizing now.
Okay.
Once the year end closes, we'll go through the whole process, and it will be, the new free cash will be certified for 2026 around September of 2025.
Could we get just where we stand right now, could we get a printout of that?
Of the
Yeah.
current, the
Yeah,
2025?
current,
Yeah,
yeah,
yes,
great,
absolutely.
thanks.
If the, I'll
Oh,
forward
yeah.
it to the town manager.
We'll get that right out to
Yep.
you.
So we can have it for our analysis,
Absolutely.
our report.
Yep.
Thank you.
Set to go to town meeting.
So you made a fairly significant reduction in expenses for the fire department compared to what they had asked for?
That was the Barnstable County.
About 100,000.
Oh, thank you. The Barnstable County dispatch service was extremely high, or let me rephrase that, higher, much higher than anticipated.
Yep.
So, we were starting to look at options in terms of dispatch services, and they came down significantly.
Really?
Oh, wow.
So
Just
we
from-
were able to adjust that. So it wasn't a reduction per se or a cut. It was
The
a
cost.
reduction from a request based upon the request itself being modified. Does that make sense, Mr. McKelvey?
Some, a little negotiating going on.
That's great that they came down.
Well, actually, I think what they used, the demographics that they were using,
Were-
the information was not correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we had asked you, where are they getting that figure? Where is our share coming from?
It was, it's fair to say, an inaccurate figure that was
Scam.
initially
Go ahead, say it.
given to us. No, I won't say scam. I think it was just, I think it was a good faith error. I don't think there was any malicious intent. I think it was just an error based on a calculation or miscalculation. But we got it straightened out. But I saw the same number that you saw, and I'm like, whoa, we got to look at options here.
Yeah.
And it became a moot point because the number that you now have is something that I found acceptable, and obviously I put that in the recommendation. But no, there was no reduction in essential expenses.
So did it wind up then that the dispatch services were, cost was about the same as last year then?
No, there was an increase, but I don't have that figure off the top of my head, but I do know that it was,
Not a
it was-
$90,000
It was not
increase.
it was a reasonable figure.
Okay, good.
It was no figure that I was looking at and saying, I almost flipped out of my chair.
Any further questions?
Good.
No? Rodney, you were pretty generous this year, not many huge cuts that you made.
You reach a point where expenses, I mean, there's not really any significant wiggle room there. I mean, if the department head comes in and requests something and they have crossed the Ts and dotted the Is and they've articulated the reason for it, especially things that are related to things like cybersecurity, you want to try to be responsible, and at the same time, the majority, as you know, is attributed to salaries and wages
Contracts.
and contracts. I mean, that is generally 85 to 90% of a lot of municipal budgets. So the only way to reduce that is to reduce personnel, and I certainly would not be advocating that, given the services the people have come to expect. But that's why you try to balance these long-term capital needs out so that there's not these big spikes. You try to say, well, okay, let's try to do this year and something else next year, and whether it's the school, the PD, the FD, or DPW, you try to balance things out, and I think we've tried to do that fairly consistently. I know I've got a couple members here of CIP. So in the end, there really wasn't a lot to reduce. I know we sat with those that showed up, and it was like, it is what it is. There's nothing really that you can do without reducing personnel, and I know some of you sat in those meetings.
I do have a question about the Council on Aging. Council on Aging requested $447,000, and your recommendation was $394,000, about a $50,000 difference. What, do you remember what that's about?
The full-time person.
Yeah, I believe that's, you're talking about personnel, is that where you're at?
Well,
Yes,
yes,
salary.
it's
Okay, I can explain that.
okay.
I believe the position is an activities coordinator. And speaking of reducing, that was reduced last year, the request. It was a request again this year. Long story short, the reduction I believe you're seeing is attributed to the part-time person, but you're going to see a warrant article for a full-time person for activities coordinator. This year, 2025, should, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, resolve any and all personnel needs for the next few years. I don't want to see any others in terms of full-time personnel. What we're observing is a challenge finding in this economy, a challenge finding part-time personnel that will do the job for what we're paying. But if we reclassify it to full-time, there are folks who are attracted to the benefits, specifically the health insurance, 75%. So if we can fill the position at a full-time level versus not finding anybody, despite numerous advertising at a part-time basis, then at some point we have to, I guess, acknowledge that's what we need to do, because the level of services is not changing. We still have to clean the schools. We still need to clean town hall. So DPW, as well as the Council on Aging, which is the position you're referring to, are all facing those challenges, part-time to full-time.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the town manager? No? Thank you so much for coming in.
I am on vacation next week, but the assistant manager is here. So please reach out to him next week or me tomorrow if you have any questions. And if you need us or any department head at any meeting, just let me know and we'll arrange it.
And I will get the documents to
Yes.
the town manager so he can forward it to everybody.
We'll get it right out to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And when can we expect to see the warrant articles?
When can they expect to see the warrant articles?
10, and so we're filing it now. I would say it's going to be a couple of weeks.
Okay.
The assistant, for those that couldn't hear it, is expecting it in a couple weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Location.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we don't need to discuss any warrant articles tonight?
No, we don't.
Well, we could discuss, can we discuss the budget and the CIP?
Yes.
Do you want to look at that?
So there's a total that we're going in for 80.9 million.
That's with the wastewater.
Yeah,
Without the wastewater, it's over here.
78, 79.
Yeah.
Bye, thank you. What would you like to discuss, Mr.
Well, I don't
McKelvey?
know, are we, how does, I make a motion.
Discuss that?
I would make a motion to accept the CIP tonight.
Second.
We have some-
Any discussion?
Well, yeah, that's that. Now, being in on that meeting, I think the town manager really underemphasized the fact that we really came a long way with that. Like he said, it's hard to give everybody everything, but it was a real collaborative issue on everybody's part. And people, I think people understand you can't always get everything. And of course, what I like most is the 5-year plan that we have.
Yeah.
You can look out over 5 years and see what's coming.
Yep.
Think that through.
I
You know,
do
all-
think that's really smart.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
effective.
And I think of all the numbers on here, I know the big number is the police department, but I think most of us have done a tour of that location. We understand the need, and I support it, and I think we should go through with it.
I agree. There's already grumbling online in the town pages about the cost, but this is post-COVID, when
Right, you're
the cost
post-COVID.
of building or
Well,
fixing
post-COVID,
it-
everything's up 30%.
Yep.
And then you have.
Or more.
Or more, and then
Yeah.
you have supply issues.
Yep.
Supply chain issues are out there everywhere. And the longer, and we,
The
they.
longer we wait, the more it's going to be.
Yeah.
And we also looked at, remodeling. And remodeling
So
cost was
remodeling
outrageous as well.
Yeah, three quarters the
Right.
cost of a new.
And I encourage anyone in the
More
pub,
than that.
Right.
It was more than that, 3/4. I thought I had 33.
34.
Yeah,
So-
and the new one is 37.
And I think it's
So,
important that if people have questions, want to take a tour of the station, they can probably.
Yep.
Contact the PD. And I would also say, come on April 10th to that meeting. And you get a full exposure to it as well. But seeing is believing. And once you walk through the doors, you almost immediately see it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
And I think
And
if.
smell it.
if
And
some-
smell it.
You can just smell the mold.
yes.
If some of us are there at that meeting who can say, I was there, and this is what I found, this part was so horrible, and that part was so horrible, and, it's just,
Well, the fact that
I asked the,
there was places I could have swam in, the water was coming in.
yeah.
I asked the police chief to bring in the wiring inspector in the town and the plumbing inspector to go through the building, and you just categorize all the things that would be out of spec, illegal,
Yeah.
where they are. Just notarize the whole thing.
Well, they have long.
He's got to do some work, the police chief and Rodney.
Yes.
To make this fly.
Oh, yeah, it's not gonna be easy. Not an easy step.
It's easy for me. No, because we were there, everybody that was there,
Yeah.
it's easy. Just-
And hopefully the photos that they will show what we saw, but I think it's in the photos, you can't smell, and you
Right,
can't
right.
see the water coming down and
No,
all
you
that,
can't.
so.
Well, the bottom line is, it's unsafe and unhealthy.
Well, that's really
We
the
want our
problem.
public servants working in that type of environment, where there's water running down the walls and the windows, where there's rats in the basement
Yep.
everywhere,
Sewage coming up
feces
in the locker
everywhere,
rooms.
sewage coming up through the locker room.
Yep.
I think there has to be a real understanding of what's going on there.
Well, I think the town in general is very supportive of our police
Oh,
department.
absolutely.
So I don't see this as being,
Yeah. Once people understand the issue and the problem,
Yeah,
I think it would be fine.
it may be a hard sell because of the price.
True.
Everything else, everything goes up, so people are
Yeah.
looking at it in the
Yes.
same.
well, and they're saying, look, Sandwich just got theirs done for less than half the cost, but it was pre-COVID.
Right.
It was,
Totally different.
And some of those numbers, from my understanding, weren't exactly correct.
right.
So,
Okay, so should we vote on approving?
I made a motion to,
how does that
I made the motion to approve the capital improvement program plan as is, as presented by the town manager.
So my question
Dated
is, why are
when?
we approving it?
We have to approve it, don't we?
Not as far as I know. What we'll approve is.
Recommend.
Recommend is what's in the warrant.
Right, well, this will be in the warrant.
Not
Well,
there.
no, we
What
don't
it'll
know
be
that yet.
is
We
just
don't
the
know that yet.
individual pieces, until we actually see it in the warrant, what we do here
I see what you're
is
saying.
nothing.
I see what you're saying.
So,
I see what you're saying.
so
So wait till we get the warrant and then do this.
Then the article's
Okay.
there, and then we can
Okay.
make that recommendation.
That makes sense, too. Then I withdraw my motion, Madam Chair.
Do you withdraw your
I
second?
do.
All right. Thank you, Jeff, for your wisdom, as always.
You're welcome.
So we don't vote on the budget then until
No.
we see the
Get the warrant.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes
This
sense.
at the moment is for us to do our analysis and
Yeah.
review,
Digest it.
ask any questions we have about it once we look at the numbers in depth. Make any recommendations we want to make to Rodney on changing amounts. So, all up until we actually get the warrant article with the amounts in there.
Right.
Then we'll take the vote to recommend, not recommend, or make a secondary proposal.
Exactly.
So do we really need to meet next week then? If we're not gonna have
We're not going to have any warrants.
any warrant articles for a couple of weeks?
Well, we may get them next week, we may not.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
We can wait until, see if we get them,
Yeah.
and then you can make
Well,
that determination.
I mean, the
Well, it also
agenda-
gives people an opportunity
Oh.
to
Public
peruse these
comment.
things more clearly, to get some more public comment. Maybe someone will come in from the public and make a
I
comment.
should have these numbers in our spreadsheet and back out to people to look at, so.
Yeah, I say we
any
meet.
questions that come up, that we want to have somebody come in.
So what would you like me to put on the agenda for next week then? Review,
Review budget and CIP.
review budget analysis?
That's probably a good thing. And keep the town manager updates if Wayne has anything to bring to us. But review it and discuss the proposals.
Warrant articles if available?
If available, but we can, like I said, review the analysis of the budget recommendations by the town manager.
Yeah.
Discuss the CIP if anybody has any questions on anything, so.
Yeah. And do we have a date for our public hearing?
There is one, yes.
Do you remember what that is?
I don't off the top of my head. I can probably look it up. Do you want me to look it
Yeah,
up?
just keep making sure.
I don't know how you do anything with those nails.
I don't have my schedule. breakdown.
That's okay, I don't need it tonight. We'll check it out. I'll check it out. I'll check my,
Yeah,
Get it
It's
next
sometime
week.
in March,
right,
anyways.
right.
I have it hanging at my desk, so I
There
will
you go. You
text
can
you
text that to me.
tomorrow
Thank you.
morning.
Say, I think I have it on paper.
Okay.
Probably the second or third.
Second or
Yes.
third weekend, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to hear that the dispatch number was
Boy, is that true.
elevated.
Right?
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any opposition? Hearing none, passed by unanimous consent. See you all next week.
Thank you all.
Thank you.